I'm Matthew Wilkinson from Safaritalk.net. In the second part of this Safaritalk interview, I talk with Dr. Ian Player and fellow conservationist Paul Dutton on a number of issues, including the history of wildlife conservation in South Africa, the demand from Oriental countries driving the rhino poaching crisis, and whether stockpile sales or sustainable farming, trade legalisation will help stem the killings, and how important the upsurge in public awareness and reputable rhino organisations are.
Although I was stationed at Lake St. Lucia looking after hippo in the early 1950s and so on, there were a handful of rangers in the whole of Zululand, and so we had to combine forces and so on, and I'd have the privilege and the pleasure of going up to Mfolozi and actually helping with the rhino capture and things like that. So that was my connection with them. And then later on, my wife and I took a bunch of white rhino to Europe for a game park and so on. So that was my connection. And although the people working in Mfolozi looked down upon us, people down in the valley, because of mosquitoes, and so there was this rather snobbish thing about, because they rode on horses and we rode in canoes and so on, that they were better than us. But I think we complemented each other. And so it went beyond just helping with the rhino operation, but if there was a problem like massive poaching or fire and things like that, we all pooled our resources because there were so few people from Indoma Game Reserve right to the southern borders of Natal. There were very few of us, so we had to work together, and we loved our work, we really did.
No, we're dealing with an extraordinary dangerous situation where, because of the rise of the middle class in the east, there is a demand for rhino horn, and with the prices quite astronomical. What are the prices, Paul?
No, I wouldn't. I'm not going to even mention the price, because this is what caused the decline of the rhino. In fact, there's a young ranger at Charters Creek which blew, heavy winds, and so we had these huge rhino horn keeping the doors from slamming. Something like 10 doors had 10 huge white rhino horn there. And when we were transferred elsewhere, as I was, and my wife, and to the north to Indoma Game Reserve, we left them behind for the next person to take them on. So it had no financial money at all. It was when prices were recorded in the press and things like that, that's when the top came off and things like that. Then that's when the demand for the rhino horn increased and things like that, to astronomical figures now. And so that is the cause of this tremendous decline. But the people outside of our country, outside of the continent of Africa, who are running this whole trade and so on, and that's where it has to be staunched as soon as possible. Unless we do that, we'll find a way to legalize some form of use of the rhino horn. But at the moment, it's out of control. And until we do something very rapidly, we're going to lose the rhino.
No, well, as you can imagine, Paul mentioned his wife, Anne. Well, my wife is also Anne, so I've had very long discussions with her, because we've been married since 1957, and she's been all through Operation Rhino, and a very wise woman too. I've said that quite some time back that there is a big collection of horns that have been gathered through natural mortality, and that I was in favour of the legalising of the sale of horns gathered through natural mortality. Also, these horns, if they're not carefully looked after, there's a little beetle that gets into them and they eventually crumble to dust. But South Africa probably was sitting with many tons of it. And that brings into question the whole sustainable use policy. If we don't get the people on the borders of our parks on our side, then I don't think we'll ever save the rhino. And the only way we're going to get them on our side is to work with them and to supply them with surplus game and let them benefit both financially and from a position of food. So that's sustainable use. I personally am not in favour of rhino horn farming, although there are some people, many people who are. But for me, it's disfiguring, which is, I think is, it's not very nice to see a rhino with its horn off. However, once the animal is dead and the horn has been collected in that way, I see no reason why that shouldn't be sold. And in fact, in the 1960s, the Natal Parks Board put a lot of the horns that Paul was talking about that were used as door stoppers, put them on the market at Dar es Salaam, and they were sold quite legally. But unless the one, and there's always good that comes out of bad, and some of the most horrific scenes that I've ever seen in my life is the way these rhino have been darted illegally by the most unbelievably callous people, and then how they have had their horns sawn off with a chainsaw, but not only the horns but sawn right into the jaw, and in many instances taken off the jaw off, causing unbelievable pain. But those horrendous scenes have, I think, awakened a conscience in the nation. And, well, the net result of all that is that I heard the other day there's something like 400 organisations now that are raising money for rhino. And I'm often asked, what organisation should I give to? And my reply is always the same: before you give, make sure that you see the balance sheet, so that the money is in fact going into the right place. Not that I say that anybody's going to do anything crooked, although there's always that possibility. But if you've seen the balance sheet, then you know that this is a reputable organisation. I mean, organisations like the Endangered Wildlife Trust and the Makobu Ntombela Foundation, the Wilderness Foundation in South Africa, and Wilderness Foundation in England, and the Wilderness International Leadership Development in America, all gathering money, and that money, with a really small percentage of going to administration, actually goes to the saving of rhino.
Most ecosystems in the world are being protected by what is known as flagship species and so on. Without the Indian tiger, there'd probably be no jungle left and so on. And certainly in the Mfolozi Game Reserve, without the rhino, it would have lost that iconic flagship species and so on, and very difficult to protect an area which you don't have. So I think it's vitally important that, one tragedy is losing the rhino, but also losing the game reserve as well. So I think the two are linked together. It's a holistic attitude towards the rhino. It's such an integral part of them. Even if they're old adult rhino males walking around, they're still incredibly valuable to that. The aesthetic value, it's immeasurable, the amount of the value of that animal is.
I'm afraid it's not that easy. When you have beliefs that go back 2,500 years, you're not just going to change it just like that. And particularly when you've had instances in the last 2 years where people claim to have been cured of cancer because of the use of rhino horn, and that is rife now in places like Vietnam. And so it's just not that easy. Beliefs are beliefs. I mean, we believe, those of us who are Christians believe in Jesus Christ, but who's going to get that out of us? And you can't. It's 2,000 years, and even if you don't acknowledge it consciously, you will dream of the fish, which unconsciously you will be reminded of the origin of Christianity. So I think that's the same with the East. I mean, the Easterners have got their beliefs and they're welcome to them. But what we've got to do, we've got to get together with the Chinese and with the Vietnamese and sit down at the table and really discuss the problem. And I know that our minister has been over to China. I've got friends in China, and I know that they have been there and they've discussed, but we've got to find a way. I mean, one of my suggested solutions is that we should invite the Chinese to come to Pietermaritzburg, set up a factory, and that we go into business with the horns that have been gathered through natural mortality. I mean, I just cannot imagine why anyone would be against, although there are a large number, for various reasons, who are against the use of horns through natural mortality. But I think, you know, a lot of us are quite happy to give our bodies, although mine's not much use.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah.
But it's the heart that is important.
Well, yeah.
Dear me. But it is a challenge for us in our later years. And we've always faced challenges, you know, from when we were young rangers and so on. It's never been an easy task looking after the natural environment and so on, but it's been very good for us by the same token and things like that. And we still continue to challenge these misconceptions and try and sort of encourage the next generation of people to nurture, as we did, our wildlife heritage.
Well, I mean, as Paul rightly said, you know, when we began our careers back in the 1950s, people were not very sympathetic to conservation at all.
No.
And in fact, you know, not only were we shot at, but I remember Paul once was assaulted and had someone try to put a burning cigarette in his ear. And you couldn't walk into, as a park board officer, you couldn't walk into a bar because you'd be in a fight in 2 minutes. I mean, game was an anathema because of the tsetse fly. So game conservation was not popular. I mean, we were at the bottom end of the social scale. I mean, I can remember in 1952 I had like 3 friends in Zululand.
As many as that.
Dr. Buthelezi, who was the Zulu, the head of the Zulu people.
Yeah.
Was one's house that I was welcome. Campbell McNally, Ian Garland, and Jack Bertram, and that was it. Then nobody else would have you in their houses. I mean, you were rubbish.
Yes.
But through persistence, and then, you know, Paul coming, joining the Parks Board, gradually we started to win people over. But I think, as I said earlier on, that one of the only bright things about this poaching and the horrendous sights of these unfortunate animals, this poor, inoffensive white rhino. And let us never forget one thing, one critical thing, that is, without the white rhino, there would have been no parks. It was because of the discovery of the white rhino in 1894 at the junction of the white and the black Umpelosi that the parks in Zululand were established, and that led to the parks throughout Africa being established. So we owe the white rhino that. And I think that in a way this death of this horrendous death which one is seeing on television and photographs and in articles that have been written, I think that is, again, the white rhino has awakened the conscience of people. And there is a rising tide of determined people for various reasons who are going to make sure that not only that the rhinos survive, but that the parks are going to survive, and that there's a better understanding of our own place in the natural world and our responsibility to other life.